Hello, everyone. Welcome. My name is Anna Raful. I am your host of At This Stage, presented by Camp Broadway. With our friends at Streamable Learning, I am live from my apartment in New York City, connecting you with Broadway professionals, both on and off the stage, connecting them to you, our families, our students, and our friends all across the country. I'm so happy you've joined us today. Start thinking of those questions you have for our fantastic guests, and you can put them in the Q&A feature, and I promise I will get to as many of them as I possibly can. I'm so excited to introduce you to our guest today. Our guest is Holly Raye. Hi, Holly.
Hi. Hey, Anna.
Hi. So Holly is a veteran performer of the stage, director and choreographer. She appeared on Broadway in Guys and Dolls as well as Swing, and has been the lead dancer in numerous TV and film productions, as well as an assistant to the fantastic David Copperfield. Holly also spends her time teaching and sharing her wisdom and knowledge with students in various forms, including Camp Broadway, which is where I met Holly. Holly, welcome. How are you? Where are you?
I am in my home right now in Maplewood, New Jersey, where I live with my son.
And how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. You know, I feel great. Staying positive. I'm really psyched that we have a beautiful day out. The sun is shining. We're in, but that's okay.
But the sun helps. The sun always helps.
The sun helps. Yes.
All right, so let's go back to the beginning. So what are your earliest memories of theater? How did you, were you first introduced to theater, music, dance?
I grew up in Detroit, Michigan, and my mother started me dancing when I was about 5 years old, much in the vein of classical ballet. So I had a very solid, strict foundation. And my dance teacher had been a vaudeville tapper. So I had these two very different extremes and not much in the middle. So that was kind of how I grew up. I didn't grow up around a whole lot of theater. But I grew up with Gene Kelly movies and Elvis Presley movies and Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers. Oh my God, and Shirley Temple. I couldn't get enough of that stuff. That really fed me because it was accessible from my home indoors. And there, in our surrounding area, like in high school, there was no theater department in my high school. There were talent shows. But my first theater memory is going to a chorus line, seeing it on tour. I was probably around 11 or 12 years old at the Fox Theater in downtown Detroit. And I was such a bunhead at the time. I remember thinking, wow, that was really great, but I wish there had been more dance.
In a chorus line, you wish there was more dance.
I know, exactly. But that is the 11-year-old perspective of, for me. And so that's kind of where it was. And I stayed with my dancing in that area until I started working professionally, really when I was about 18 years old, locally between Detroit and Chicago.
And when you say you were you dancing 5 days a week? Were you dancing every day? What was your
growing up? I probably started 2 days a week, but by the time I was probably 12 or 13, I was in the studio 6-7 days a week. We were either taking class or we were in rehearsals because we did a recital show, a very big show every year in like May. And so I went to school all day. By the time I came home, I was in the studio by 4 o'clock, home by 9 o'clock at night, and then writing my term papers until 5:30 in the morning, studying Cliff's Notes, because that's what we had. Yeah, so that really, two separate lives. I had school and then I had dance.
And so you graduated high school, and where did your journey take you next?
I went to a local community college just because I didn't really know what I wanted to do, but I met a local peer group that was very involved with live shows that were going on, whether it was industrial shows. We did have the auto industry in Detroit, so that drove a lot of the commercial market. So I got my SAG card because I did a national commercial in Detroit.
Can you, before you keep going, can you just explain what an industrial is?
Sure. Live industrial shows are performances for a corporation, let's say McDonald's, AT&T, Verizon, State Farm, and you perform something for the members getting together, usually that has some reference to their business motto. The auto shows it was the same kind of thing. I worked for GMC. I did a live show for the auto show that toured around the country. So by the time I was 18 to 21, I had a very good background in performing, but it was still dance driven. I didn't have to, I had to do very little opening my mouth and singing, so or speaking intelligently. So that was just my comfort zone at that time, and I was very comfortable on stage, but I knew that I had kind of reached the cap of where I was going to go locally, and I really didn't know what was next until I knew what was next.
And what was next?
Well, I walked into a dance studio, and literally a friend of mine walked in as well. I can't remember what we were rehearsing, and he said, "Oh my gosh, there's an audition in New York tomorrow." And I went, and it was for a TV special, and they were hiring a lot of people. And I woke up the next morning, I got in my car with nothing more than my pink Capezio dance bag, and I flew People's Express, which was $34 in cash, which you handed it, I know. And I flew to New York, and I had to stay 2 days because they had this thing called a callback, which I had never heard of before.
Okay.
Got a hotel. I ended up getting the show, and 6 weeks later, moving to New York. And that was the beginning. That was the summer of 1986. Hate to date myself, but I was 21 years old, and I got to work there. It took us 4 weeks to rehearse and film and perform live this amazing, huge show. But this is where I literally got to share a stage with Shirley MacLaine, with Liza Minnelli, and with some of the most amazing performers that Broadway had to offer. The show Big Deal had just closed, and so a lot of performers were out of work. It was this interesting transition. It was June, and it was amazing because I was surrounded by the best of the best, and I was very young, and it was just in awe of the talent and the professionalism, and really I got taught by the atmosphere. I learned everything that first month, so much that I could understand, oh, I need a Backstage magazine to find an audition, and then I just show up and I go here, and what does this mean? And by the end of the summer, I had at least 4 really strong credits on my resume and enough confidence that I kind of knew how to pound the pavement.
That's amazing. I mean, that's amazing. You were thrown right into it, and did it feel daunting at the time? How were you able to sort of keep yourself going?
I met a lot of people. I met friends. I lived with a couple girls that were also in the show in Brooklyn, and all I did was sleep there. I was in the dance studio every day. I was trying to get acquainted with voice teachers, trying to learn the ropes because I have a lot to learn in order to compete with everybody else that had a professional career already. So I learned just from watching and listening and gaining friendships that summer.
That's sort of the best thing you could have asked for, is to be thrown in with all these people that you could learn from.
Yeah, and I had to move to New York with a job, which was a foundation. Without that, it would have been a very different kind of struggle. So I kind of felt like I did my groundwork in Detroit before I left. And then by the time I got to New York, it was a different set of circumstances I had to conquer. I had to get out of my comfort zone and try to do things I hadn't done before.
So, and you have the opportunity now, you work with a lot of young actors and young dancers. From what they've told you and what you've seen, how are these two experiences different? How do they differ now? I mean,
Well, of course, we didn't have computers, cell phones, we didn't have iPads. We had to show up live in full hair and makeup and body type. There was a lot of typing back then. You automatically walked in. If you weren't what they were looking for, they let you go before you ever did anything. Um, it was just a very, very uh, different atmosphere for casting completely. I don't know that I could acclimate today, but uh, it's been, you know, I have to be in touch with how kids are doing it today to understand and still draw from my experience to say there are some core elements of how things used to be that are still important today. And frankly, they're all the things that Camp Broadway teaches: integrity and perseverance and persistence and joy, really still finding the joy in the journey and not just the destination. You're going to get there, but you've got to be able to do those little things along the way.
did you ever have one of those talked about auditions where they had you do one move, and if you couldn't do the like a double pirouette, and then they were like, we're going to keep you, we're not going to keep you from a time step or anything?
Oh gosh, yeah, probably a million of them. You know, like everybody, I was too short, I was too tall. My hair was too long, it was too short. I'm too blonde, I wore blue that day. The director didn't like blue. I mean, I heard it was all kinds of things. I got hired for a very prominent, my first Broadway show actually, which was Guys and Dolls, was 6 years earlier. I was cast and then uncast in a show because literally, I don't know why, but it was a very bizarre experience at that time, which apparently was very common. But things were just different. I had to learn a lot about really holding on to who I was and to just not worry about what the casting director or the director was going to see, but they had a job to do. I just had to do my job. I had to show up and just be the best I could be that day and let the rest of it go. And that took a while the rejection took a while to just know that this is just part of the industry.
I want you to tell your story about Guys and Dolls, about how that process, because I think it's such a also a sign of story of perseverance, and that, you know, we get this fantasy in our head, you're going to walk in and they're going to be like, you're it, that's it. It didn't happen that way.
It didn't happen that way. I had a real connection to the show the moment that it started on Broadway. I remember going to see the show and watching every single move that one of these performers made to go, oh my gosh, that's what they do that makes what they do so special. I was terrified to watch it. I just knew, not that I wanted this show so bad, I did, but I had a sincere connection to the fact that I don't know how this is going to happen, but it's going to happen. And I had been on tour and I was back and forth between New York. I went to, about 6 months after the show opened, I went to an open call and I was let go. And I'll never forget Chris Chadman, the choreographer, walking up to me, shaking my hand just the way Bob Fosse used to, and saying, thank you very much. I thought he meant thank you very much and you can stay. He meant thank you very much, you can go now. And I literally, my eyes were like, what? But this is supposed to be. So I remember going back to the show again. I would buy a ticket and go watch again. I must have watched the show 4 times and going, what is it? I need to know. I have to figure out what it is that I need to apply to myself because this is going to happen. Long story short, I finally get off tour. The show has now been up for about a year, Guys and Dolls. And I come back and I start pounding the pavement and I go to a Cats audition. And they keep me to the very end and then they I'm on my way. And when I get home, I get this funny phone call from the casting director, and they said, "We'd like to see you tomorrow for a private audition for Guys and Dolls." And I was like, "Oh, you mean that show you cut me from 6 months ago?"
Because it was the same casting director.
It's the same casting director. And so I went to this private audition. There were only 4 of us there. And I could tell that they were really interested in this other girl. I was much taller than everybody else. I was the only blonde. I just could tell, like, what one thing doesn't look like everything else. I'm like, I'm never getting this. And literally went home that day, and within a couple hours, I got a phone call that said, "We'd love you to join the show. You've been cast in the show." And I just was shocked. Thrilled,
Thrilled.
I stopped guessing. But the truth of the matter was, they wanted this other girl, but this other girl had a contract conflict with another show. She was cast in another show, and she couldn't get out of her contract. At that time, this particular theater did not give an out clause in your contract, and therefore they offered the show to me. Wow. So I was thrilled because I got to make my Broadway debut, and it wasn't because I went out for a call for Guys and Dolls. It was because I showed up to the Cats audition, and the casting director said, "Wow, she's not right for what we're looking for this show, but I have a private call for her tomorrow, and she's really right for that." And it was amazing. And eventually, just to let you know, the girl they didn't choose went on tour. Great. And she did become part of the show on tour, and I was really thrilled about that because it's great to feel good about everybody else getting work as well. So that was my story.
It's such a good story. Who did you play in Guys and Dolls?
I was a hot box girl, and I also got to eventually do the Havana dance specialty, which was so thrilling to have a featured part on a Broadway show. I had to ask for it, but I learned a big lesson there that I said, I really want to do this. If something comes up, if you have another change in casting and it's available, I'd love to do it. And eventually they gave it to me. So it was the undercover understudy for it. So yeah.
I mean, why? I mean, you got to ask. If you don't ask, you'll never know.
That's what I learned. If you don't ask, they don't know how bad you want it.
What was your life like? How did you keep yourself in shape? I mean, 8 shows a week. That show is for those of us who know. And if you don't know the show, please go watch the original movie. Yeah. It's a dance heavy show, especially as a hot box dancer. What was that like? I mean, you had been trained, so that was, you sort of were ready for it, but.
Yeah, I think I had been on tour also for 2 years prior to that. I was probably in the best shape of my life. I had just done the hardest job ever for myself. And when I came back to New York, I felt like if I can do that, I can do anything. And so I did have to go to class every day. I was in dance class multiple times a week. I was at the gym as well, just trying to stay physically strong because the stamina necessary for the 8 shows a week, it was very dance driven. It was very hard. And it was gloriously hard. Just really exciting. And I just, those relationships were lifelong. I ended up doing, in fact, one of the guys, Rod McCune, came back and I was able to do swing on Broadway with him as well. So it was great to see. Oh, and Aldrin Gonzalez. I'm going to think of all the people that did Guys and Dolls that I ended up getting to do another show with, which is always super exciting.
Okay, I have a couple of questions here for you.
Great.
So do you have, what are some important things that young dancers these days need to learn? Not so many, but yeah.
Yeah. Oh, dance and I would say always that if you really have a good, strong foundation, a technique, you can always rely on that for a long career. You need to have a really strong, healthy body. and form is key. So I think in general, my classical background, although ultimately that was not going to be my path in life, although I thought so early on, it gave me the foundation that I could do anything after that. And also pick up on styles, do multiple things, do lots of things that bring you joy. Find a teacher, a dance teacher that you resonate with, and step out of your comfort zone. Like I stopped taking ballet class because I already felt like I kind of knew how to do that, but I studied with people that used a foundation to keep me strong for the long run.
Fantastic. Sasha wants to know, which I do too, when did you make the move to start choreographing?
Good question. I had a couple opportunities along the way, but I would say really not until I was done with my performing career, which was about 25 years long, I'll say. So when I was about 43, and after I'd had my son, I was done. I was really at peace with my performing career. So moving over felt very good. I had also had some opportunities to do some casting along the way. And I started to really feel that I got more joy out of facilitating the success of kids or other people than I did for myself. And that was a big mental move for me, to just be able to be on the other side of the table, to look at someone and then mold your vision in your head, to then get a picture. So then choreographing, it's so full of joy to watch somebody else bring something to life that kind of lives in your head. And so again, watching them be able to do that just became something that was more important and that brought me more joy than for myself. And then I knew it was right. Then I knew that moving on was really, the timing was really good.
That gave me chills, I'm not gonna lie. I have a question from Abigail. I am not a dancer. How do I survive a dance call?
Fake it till you make it. Always, always. There are so many ways to fake a time step. And I will say that being on even though I'm that background, I will always kind of look for someone that can be joyful and have fun. That is the key. And I'm much more likely to hire someone or cast someone that can do that and fake it than someone who really has to go down that really specific, too over choreographed or too what am I trying to say? Technical. Yeah, it doesn't have to be that way. It really doesn't. All you have to do is have fun, and that's really what we're looking at. And then there's always going to be people that are in that category. But when you're just trying to make it through your dance call, you've got to hang on to the fun. And a lot of it really is fake it till you make it. Just fake it. We love that. We do. Right? We really love it. We really love it.
Well, the joy as a performer is so felt by those who watch. And so why wouldn't you want someone who smiles, even if they're missing a step here or there, or they forget to point?
Exactly. That can be taught. That's why we have rehearsal.
Right. So what are you doing now? Where do you teach? I know we talked about Camp Broadway a little bit, and where else are you directing and choreographing?
I just got done doing Peter Pan. I've been really lucky to get involved in some of the elementary schools out here in New Jersey. I love this age group, the 4th and 5th graders, because they're incredibly talented. Some have already had some dance and singing background, but some of them don't. And what I've discovered is how naturally musical some kids are at this point. And we just did the most amazing production of Peter Pan. I couldn't be more proud of it and be able to bring my background to this level to get a finished product that the kids can be proud of, and introduce them to the element, the role that costuming plays and the role that the lighting will play, and then introduce them. They all have to wear mics, and teaching them the simple basics of projection and enunciation, which is only going to make them better at anything they're going to do in life. But if they may not have had any other way to learn it, they get to learn it doing this activity, and I only get them for about 8 weeks, and they work so hard, really, really, really hard, and the payoff is so good. And watching them have that level of fulfillment and joy it's so rewarding. So locally, that's one of the things I've been able to pursue and accomplish for the last 4 years out here. And then along with sticking my fingers in anything else I can kind of stay engaged within the industry.
I think you brought us some, we've had some requests for any other memories from Guys and Dolls. I think you brought some photos and some memorabilia.
I do. I have several of my original playbills and my headshot at the time. I had a couple different headshots, but there's me down there, very serious. And I get to go back and see all the remaining. I still have the refrigerator magnet. There you go. And another little tchotchke thing that came along. And then I have some photos. When we did A Bushel and a Peck, it was a really different take on it. Chris Chadman came up with the fact that we would all be chickens. So the Hot Box girls were the chicken, and then when Faith Prince came out, she was the main chicken, the big chicken. And the big chicken. We had Take Back Your Mink, which is just a spectacular thing. When Sky takes Sarah to Havana, we are all the Havana dancers. I got to be a blonde, a brunette, and a redhead in the show. Nice. I had 5 different wigs. Here's some of the girls all lined up backstage. And then I would say the opening number where we first come out is one of my favorites. This costume was like head to toe velvet, but literally the fact that I got to wear 5 different wigs, every single color imaginable, and just such great people, really, really such great people involved in this show. The best memories. And I learned more from my experience in that show that made me appreciate actors when I got to direct them. Even if it's just kids or older, because I got to really, I would go down and watch every time there was a understudy on or a swing on, and watch them, like, how did they do that? How did they just come off from not going on the stage for 4 months and then suddenly have to go on in a starring role in a mega hit show? And watching the chemistry evolve, palpable chemistry evolve on stage. Really funny moments when one with Faith Prince is about to do Adelaide's Lament, and someone in the audience literally has a massive sneeze and breaks the fourth wall in order to address them with this look. I had never seen some of that stuff before. It was just fascinating.
What did you, with all those costumes and all those wigs, and especially with the number Take Back Your Mink, were there any moments of wardrobe issue on stage, and how do you deal with that? I mean, how do you react when it's live theater? What has been your experience with all of that?
Here we go back to fake it till you make it. Yes, your pearls break, your headpiece falls off, you get your heel stuck. That was a big one. The heel getting stuck in the dress and you go down all the way. You have to get up. You know, right. In Mink, we had a beautiful full length, it was like this bluish purple gown that has to come off, plus the mink has to come off, plus it was really such a stunning number, choreographically and visually with the costumes and everything. But man, it was a lot, and they were heavy. The costumes were heavy. Oh, there were costume mishaps, there was everything, but you can't let it show. So really early on, like I said before, if you can fake it till you make it somewhere, you're going to end up using that skill later on because you're going to have to.
And the audience doesn't know. I mean,
the audience never knows. And even if they do, they're right there with you. Those vulnerable moments are the magic of theater, really.
All right, I have a couple more questions here. Karina wants to know, what type of dance lessons should I take if I want to be in musicals? Because I'm not good enough yet. I'm going to add that yet, Karina, at dancing, but I'm good at learning them quickly.
Oh, that's great, knowing that you're good at learning them quickly. Like I said, if you can take ballet lessons, not because you want to be a ballet dancer, but because you're going to learn a vocabulary that's going to be consistent throughout your career. So you will always know what a chaîné turn is, a kickball change. You're going to know what a pas de bourrée is. It really, you need to beef up your dance vocabulary, and so that it's in your body. So that when they just say it and they don't necessarily demonstrate it, what a box step is, what a jazz square is, what a grapevine is, and then I love lyrical work, lyrical jazz. Tap is great because I think tap, the rhythm of a classic tap, is great for your singing as well. And I think tap is so fun. So fun. Very rarely do you find a serious tap situation. And again, even when you're tap dancing, you're going to come up with time step dance vocabulary that you really, really need to know. Those are super important and will really get you far in the audition process.
Oh, I think that's my favorite thing you said so far is you can never find a serious tap number. I'm sure there are, but I don't want to see those. I just had a question. You said tap. Oh, who are some dancers and choreographers that you look to for inspiration, or who are some names that our young students should look back and study? I know there are many, but.
Right. Well, I have to say, out of the whole Guys and Dolls year, I did Guys and Dolls with Andy Blankenbuehler. Okay, so we know who he is. Hamilton. Bandstand. Oh my goodness, go and watch Bandstand if you haven't. So spectacular. Sergio Trujillo, also from Guys and Dolls, with Jersey Boys, and he actually did Motown. Just so many great. These guys are so talented. Some of my favorites, Susan Stroman always did really great work. Lauren Lataro is doing some great stuff. Lauren and I did swing together. There are some lesser known, Josh Bergasse is doing some great stuff. I'm trying to think. I mean, my favorites are always going to be, go back and look at Gwen Verdon, and you can't go wrong. You just can't go wrong with any of those styles as a part of how you find your style that makes you unique, that makes you stand out in your audition.
Do you think it's harder in the audition world now than it was when you were coming up?
Yes, I would say yes. I think today you have to do it all. You have to be more of a triple threat. We used to call them triple threats, where you singing, dancing, acting. Being more proficient at one thing does kind of give you an edge if you're going for that one thing. But I think that what's happening at the college level, at the university level, is these programs that you could get involved in as you pursue your higher education are there to prepare you not only for your performance aspect when you decide to pursue a professional career, but your business aspect as well, so that you can really have a foundation to support yourself as you approach it as a business, which I think is really, really key, and to figure out how to blend those two things, how you approach it as a business and how you hang in there during the tough things, during the rejections, and just sticking to doing your best always, and knowing that that's going to be enough always, and you will get there.
I have one last question.
Okay.
So as you know, Camp Broadway, our motto is develop your character. And what does character mean to you?
Developing your character, I would say, means that you never stop growing. It means that you're always in a place of learning more, of trying something new, of integrity, really sticking to who you are, and knowing that, again, your uniqueness is what makes us love you. When you really put yourself out there, your willingness to be vulnerable. And I think programs like Camp Broadway are brilliant at helping you be in an environment where you can test those waters and find out who you are. Integrity, persistence, hang in there. Just hang in there and really stay connected to your purpose, whether you use theater or your love of theater as a way to find your love of lighting, or your love of costuming, or anything that has to do with live performance at all. Maybe you really end up just wanting to be a choreographer or director because you love to see other people succeed the way I do. I think all of those things are all a part of developing your character.
Thank you, Holly. Thank you for spending your time with me today and with all of us. How can people keep track of you, what you're up to? You're on all the social medias?
Oh, I'm gonna get there. I'm on Facebook. I do try to post the things that are really important, and you can always reach out to Camp Broadway, and they know what I'm doing, definitely.
Fantastic. And follow Camp Broadway on all of our social medias, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, all of those fantastic things. Please come back, join us tomorrow for Aaron Kurick, who will be seen soon in Mrs. Doubtfire. You'll also have seen him in the recent Hello Dolly, Something Rotten, Motown, Sister Act, Billy Elliot. He'll have a wealth of stories to share with us tomorrow. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, Holly. I just love talking to you.
Thanks, Anna.
Everyone have a great day. We'll see you tomorrow.
Bye-bye.